If the Metro North Committee meeting could come to order, please. And I think we have a safety announcement first. Justin?
Thank you. Good morning. Your safety is our first priority. The following are procedures to follow in the event of an emergency. If the alarm sounds, wait for PA announcement and follow instructions. If told to go to another floor or evacuate the building, leave all unessential items behind and use stairwell exit A just across the main hallway or stairwell E down the hall past the elevator lobby. Notify emergency personnel if you need assistance, and the AED for use by trained personnel is located in the main hall just past the elevators. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gans, do we have public speakers?
We have 3 public speakers. We ask them please to adhere to the 2-minute time limit and to address an agenda item. The first speaker is Orrin Getz, followed by Jason Pinheiro.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board. My name is Orrin Getz. I'm the vice chairman of the Metro North Rail Commuter Council. Last month, you passed out this very well done, well documented publication about what Metro North is going to be doing to improve customer service and improve the stations on the Harlem, Hudson, and New Haven lines. That's great. Unfortunately, there was no mention about what west of Hudson except for the Mid-Hudson Yard at Campbell Hall. There's a well-documented letter that I did pass out to officials going back to June of 2016, and it was from our county executive, Ed Day, and he explains in detail what Rockland County needs from the MTA, and there are many issues that have to be reviewed. The interesting thing is that the stations are a major issue in Rockland County. The Suffern Station, unfortunately, is owned by New Jersey Transit currently and looks like a derelict from the 19th century. The Spring Valley Station is even worse. It's really a disgusting mess, and it's an embarrassment. So we really need Metro North to go and take a look at all of this and to come up with a plan so that we can get a response and go over those issues. There's also something coming up, unfortunately, tonight, and that is that Clarkstown is having a hearing on transit-oriented development, and it's going to be at 7 o'clock in Clarkstown Town Hall, and we hope that maybe somebody from Metro North could make that hearing so that we have a representative from Metro North at the meeting and go over some of the issues involved with the town of Clarkstown for the transit-oriented development. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jason Pinheiro, followed by Murray Bowden.
Good morning. I'm going to be pretty short this month. I love that Metro North is providing us updates regarding positive train control. We hope that we hit that December 31st deadline, because if not, we will have to pay thousands of dollars, money that we don't have. And I hope that, Kathy, you're doing the best of jobs. I love the presentation that you provided with us last month. I hope that we will see more progress, because that's what we want. More progress and going ahead, not backwards. So that's all I have to say for this month.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Murray Bowden.
I had breakfast with my grandson Daniel this morning. 15 years ago, Daniel stood at this platform and asked that you create a Metro North station at the Yankee Stadium. That's pretty much before you started talking about the Yankee Stadium being rebuilt. This stadium was built, and I'm standing on a box because when he was here, he was about 8 years old. He's 23 now, and he gave him a box to stand on. My name is Murray Bowden. I was born June 11, 1933. I tell you that because this video is available to everybody, and emails I send you are not. So you don't have to foil to find out what I have to say. What I have to say is that the Commissioner of Transportation for the state of New Jersey, who happens to be chair of New Jersey Transit and the Turnpike as well, assigned me to work with her representative on the manual or uniform traffic control devices. to bring New Jersey into compliance, because it hasn't been. And I'm working with Kevin Dunn, who spent 15 years in Washington on the team that took care of the manual. He is now the Director of Operations for the New Jersey Turnpike and the Garden State. My mind's going, and I can't remember words the way I used to, and I use a stick. So I get screwed up a little bit. Everything I've said to you about fixing things around here will be documented by the state of New Jersey. You're playing catch-up now. The red box at Roaring Brook is illegal, as in not legal. I have asked to meet with you and go over how you can straighten that out. No answer. Not my job anymore. It's this committee's job to ensure that you follow the law, because you are not. It's time to follow the law, and if you can't do it, leave and let somebody else come in and can do it.
That concludes the public speakers.
My thanks to all the public speakers. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of our prior meeting, please? Second? Thank you. All those in favor? Minutes are approved. Are there any changes to the 2018 work plan?
Yes, there is one change. We have removed the charter review because the Corporate Governance Committee and the full board completed the annual review of all charters in March.
Thank you. May we have your report, please?
Sure. Before actually beginning the report, since we are the first meeting of the day, I'd like to begin with a moment of silence for our friend Bill Wheeler. Bill actually was a Metro North commuter. I would frequently see him on the trains as I was coming in the morning. He was a friend to our agency, who was a friend to all of us. About 2 weeks ago, shortly after his death, I happened to be in Croton Harmon Station, and a conductor came up to me and said, "Is it true that Bill died?" This was somebody that Bill just sort of interacted with on the train. Just conductors from Metro North knew him and loved him as much as we all did. So can we take a moment to remember Bill and all he did for Metro North and for the MTA as a whole? Thank you. On the safety front, I want to begin with PTC. Our monthly PTC report is in our book, and I want to highlight a couple things from that report. The one thing that I would say is the report that's at the desk of the board members is slightly different from the one in the book. There's a chart in there with respect to progress on the non-pilot segments that was not in the version that you originally received. It has been updated on director's desk, and you have a hard copy where you sit right now. In terms of updates since the last board meeting, which is only 3 weeks ago now, we have performed successful interoperability testing with Amtrak and CSX, who both operate on our lines. We are continuing to run our test train on a regular basis on the pilot line between Croton, Harmon, and Tarrytown to continue to demonstrate safe and reliable PTC operations. At the very end of October, we had a ride-along with several state and federal officials and their staffs to show essentially the complexity of the PTC system, but also what goes into actually running a test train. On the Port Jervis line, we completed the latest phase of our signal system upgrade that will support the installation of PTC. We have received conditional approval of our RSD application, and we are hopeful that we will actually begin RSD operation before the end of this month. We are in the process of finalizing our alternative schedule that will call for the aggressive commissioning on PTC on multiple segments, and we will have a better idea of how quickly that can actually be accomplished once we're in RSD and know how long the RSD period will last. Before I move on, any questions about PTC? Okay.
We're happy that you've made the progress you've made.
Thank you.
Looking good.
Thank you. As you will recall, back in September, after a somewhat rocky couple months from a service delivery perspective, we implemented a couple of initiatives with the goal of improving the reliability of our service. On the Hudson line, for example, we've been performing infrastructure improvements over several weekends this fall to remove speed restrictions at critical locations. On the New Haven line, we suspended undercutting work, and we were actually able to restore the undercut track back at the end of September. And for a couple weeks in October, we provided substitute bus service on the Danbury and Waterbury branches while we installed PTC equipment and made infrastructure improvements. As a result, in the month of October, we've begun to see a modest improvement in running times and the reliability of our service. Hudson Line service in October operated at 92.1%, and New Haven Line improved slightly at 89.1%. October service delivery improved slightly for September, but is still below goal at 89.9%. On the Harlem Line, which has been actually the consistent performer of the 3 lines east of Hudson, not so much in the month of October because of a significant storm that hit on Tuesday, October 2nd. High winds and confirmed tornadoes moved through our territory, which had a heavy impact upon the Harlem Line service for 2 days. Track 2, just north of Hawthorne Station, experienced significant damage with a washout that actually took 2 days to repair. As the result of this storm and the aftermath of this storm, our Harlem Line, OTP, was 89.6 for the month. The month of November, sadly, is not going to be the greatest month in the world because of slippery rail conditions that we've been experiencing over the past couple weeks. We've been very proactive over the past several years to deal with this issue, which is experienced by all railroads in the Northeast. As a result of our experience for the past couple of years, we're taking the following steps. We instruct our engineers to report slippery conditions immediately to our Operations Control Center. We've provided our engineers with additional training in terms of how to operate through slippery areas. We've enhanced our computerized train tracking system to allow for automatic reporting of slip-slide incidents and conditions, which allows us to take corrective action more quickly. We've installed a wheel impact load detector across all 4 tracks in the Park Avenue Tunnel, which monitors for wheel flats that may have developed during operations and allows us to identify and prioritize them for repair. And we've also installed a tandem wheel truing lathe and Harmon shop. This wheel true facility can cut both wheels on a truck simultaneously, which allows for proper wheel diameter matching and helps us return cars to service more quickly. We've also stepped up our efforts, as we previously reported, to try to keep our right-of-way as leaf-free as possible. We added an additional $1 million to our tree cutting contract several months back. We also have 2 high-pressure rail washers and several smaller rail scrubbers that remove crushed leaf residue from the tracks. And on our diesel trains, they have onboard sanders that automatically drop sand on our tracks to improve traction. So we're hoping that with the leaves falling at the rate that they're falling, that we will get through this phase in the next week or 2. But we have been struggling for a little bit in the month of November.
Have you experienced significant wheel flats so far?
We have been. I'm going to actually turn over to Kevin. Not significant. I mean, we see them every day, but it hasn't really affected the reliability of our service. But I'll have Kevin O'Connor, who's filling in for John Kesich this month, speak to that issue.
Yeah, we've had issues with wheel slip and with as Kathy noted, as well as with flats, but nothing significant, nothing that we've, nothing like we experienced, 5, 6, 7 years ago. So the fleet, we're in pretty good shape.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's good news, because once we end up with fewer cars, we're in bigger trouble.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Is the monitoring system that you have in the Park Avenue Tunnel helping with this?
Absolutely. That tells us if we've got trains that have gotten penalty brake applications and slid, it gives us readings and it determines whether or not we've got a significant issue with equipment, and we can monitor it in GCT and determine whether or not it's safe to operate or if we need to shop it and send it to the wheel true.
Good. It's a good mitigation to a real problem.
Yeah, the weather has not helped us out the past couple of weeks. I mean, yesterday we had frost, so we had a bad day yesterday. A week ago we had sort of that light misty rain, which is the worst possible weather for slip slides. So the weather has not been helping us out, but we hopefully we'll get through this in the next week or 2 and be able to restore some normality to our service.
Plus all the leaves came down in one plop.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah. So on to a little bit of good news. So I think at the last committee meeting, we mentioned that at the end of September, we had finished the first phase of capital improvements at both White Plains Station, and we completed actually work at Riverdale Station. Bringing these improvements to our station really helps improve our customers' day-to-day experience and is a key component of our Way Ahead program. So I want to share with you now, just for the information of the committee, some before and after slides at White Plains and at Riverdale. So this is before at Hamilton Street, which is not so beautiful. And look at it now. It looks great. And it's much easier for customers to find. The wayfaring, I think, is much, much easier. Actually, you can see that there's an entrance there, whereas before it was sort of tucked away under the bridge. And the bridge itself has been painted, so the bridge had been kind of rusting out, as you saw in the previous picture. It's been repainted this gray color. I think it looks terrific. This is the Mott Street Tunnel, which is for those of you who know the station, people who park in the county center come through this tunnel on their way to the platforms. It has been completely retiled and repainted on the outside, so it actually looks quite beautiful right now. This is the platform level. As you will recall, the first phase was the southernmost 3 car lengths of the platform. We, working with our our visionary architect Grimshaw, came up with this beautiful design. So we've got the wood paneling, which looks great. We've got the new customer signs and new furniture. So Riverdale, the scope of work at Riverdale was the creation of a new kiss and ride area. So you'll see before, not such a landmark, at least in terms of finding the station, and you had the barrier there. Now we have updated the overpass. We've got the same treatments with the wood ceiling in the overpass and the new furniture, and the creation of a new kiss and ride area, which is carefully delineated. It provides an opportunity for people to drop people off at the station as they're coming there. So it actually looks quite nice, and I think it's a much cleaned up and attractive point for our customers as they enter the Riverdale station. And I think that's it. Okay.
I think it would be good if you continued showing us these
Absolutely.
improvements.
Yeah.
And Orrin has a good point. I think we need to see more about what you're doing west of Hudson.
Yeah,
Both lines.
Yeah, we'll do that next month because we've actually done some work recently at Spring Valley, which I think the committee would be interested in seeing. And
Definitely.
we're also investing some money in Nanuet. So we will continue to show photos in terms of station improvements, and we'll make sure to include west of Hudson improvements in that mix as well.
Thank you.
Sure. So finally, I'm pleased to announce that we have a new director of EEO and diversity, Myra Bell, who is going to wave to you all. There she is. Stand up, Myra. Myra Bell joins us. She actually started last Wednesday. We're thrilled to have her in place. Myra has had a distinguished career that includes time with the New York City Board of Education as a trial attorney. She actually worked at New York City Transit for a time. And most recently, she worked at the New York City Mayor's Office of Labor Relations, where she served as general counsel, responsible for managing all aspects of the legal department, conducting EEO investigations, and representing the City of New York in labor proceedings. Myra graduated from Fisk University with the BA and Georgetown University Law Center with a JD. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the extraordinary work of Mayella Clark, who served as acting director for the past 9 months. Mayella spearheaded an aggressive training program over the past several months, reaching employees at all shifts and locations. And I want to personally express my thanks to Mayella for her dedication and hard work over the past 9 months. So thank you, Mayella. And this concludes my report.
Thank you. Questions? No questions? Not even PTC? Okay. Customer service highlights?
Tom has our customer service update this month.
Yes, good morning. I'm pleased to report this morning on the station ambassador pilot that we're enacting on beginning in December. This program is akin to the Grand Central Usher program, but we're deploying at major stations out in the outlying stations. The pilot will commence in December at Harlem 125th Street, Fordham, White Plains, and Stanford stations. To start, we will have ambassadors for the AM rush hours, and if the pilot is successful, expand to the PM rush hours. They will make themselves visible at the station and clearly identifiable wearing a uniform and/or jacket. They will greet customers as they arrive at the station and provide information and assistance as needed. Assist customers with directions pertaining to travel throughout the MTA service territory, major connection points and stations. Provide direction to connecting mass transit systems, local points of interest, landmarks, elevator, escalators, exits, ticket windows, etc. Provide information during service changes or major service disruptions and assist with alternate transportation such as busing if necessary. Assist customers in the use of ticket selling machines. Do system checks daily, including elevators, escalators, PA system, digital signage, TVMs, and ensure if there's issues, those get reported to the appropriate group for repair. Assist customers with limited mobility to exits, platforms, bus stops, cab stands, other mass transit points, if necessary, with the use of wheelchairs. Perform frequent safety and security checks and report issues to the appropriate personnel. And perform cleanliness and structural inspections of stations and platforms, and again, ensure that those are handled. And address any safety concerns immediately by correcting the issue or coning off areas until it can be removed or corrected by maintenance forces. And we do have the ability to move these ambassadors to other stations should we have the need. I'd like to thank or recognize the Transportation Communications Union for their cooperation with this program. And I think this, as the presence of station personnel has declined over the years, or customer service station personnel has declined over the years, we feel this will provide a much-needed infusion of personal attention at stations. Thanks.
Questions? None? Justin, could we have the safety?
Yes, thank you. The safety report can be found on page 27. Both customer and employee lost time injuries trended better than the previous 12 months. Customer injuries are down nearly 10%, and employee lost time injuries are down nearly 22%. Our community outreach program TRACS reached 9,500 individuals in September, bringing the total for the year through September to over 91,000. And finally, last month we held our annual full-scale emergency preparedness exercise in the Park Avenue Tunnel. The scenario simulated the evacuation of a train in the tunnel and included response from Metro North, MTA PD, and FDNY. The exercise evaluated the coordination and communication processes between the agencies. Thanks to the efforts of all the agencies, this was a successful exercise and further ensured our ability to respond in a real-life situation. Thank you, and that concludes the safety report.
Chuck.
I see that the broken gate problem continues apace, and I assume that that's caused playing cowboy, right?
In a certain sense, yes, sir.
In a certain sense, all right.
Its drivers not yielding to the warning devices.
I need to ask you this question, which I've asked before, and that is, do you have cameras at the gates?
We have cameras at a couple crossings to evaluate a pilot program that we have, but we don't have cameras for the intent of enforcement.
Well, have you given thought to the installation so that the people who do this, the people who put others' lives at risks, not to mention their own, are apprehended and dealt with?
Chuck, we had, and Rich can speak to this as well, for many years now, we have been submitting a proposed legislative package to the legislature in Albany seeking the ability to install cameras at grade crossing for enforcement, similar to the red light cameras that are at certain traffic signals. We will continue to advocate for that, and we'll be introducing or seeking to have that bill introduced again this year. And hopefully 1 year we will get adequate support to push that through the legislature, because we think that would be an extremely important safety initiative to improve driver behavior at grade crossings.
Would you give a copy of that package as soon as you possibly can to each member of the board?
Yes, we will send that to you.
They didn't get here through ads in the New York Times, and they have people who know and support them and who they can get to the friends in the legislature and ask them to do it.
No, we've been submitting this proposal to the legislature 10 years. I mean, for multiple years, for many years, and we will continue to advocate for it every year.
Good. Thank you.
Do you do this jointly with Long Island Railroad?
Do we do this jointly with Long Island Railroad? I think so, yeah. Yes. Yes, it's
Okay.
both. Yes. Yeah.
It is one bill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chuck, thank you for bringing this up. I think we as board members need to put our shoulders to this wheel.
Yeah, we will send you the proposal as soon as this meeting is over.
Permit me a timely footnote. Thanks to Joe Loda, and that's why I say it's timely, this board's energies have been harnessed in a constructive manner on areas such as paratransit, procurement, and the like. And that is a first in the history of the MTA, that the board members are no longer viewed as empty suits, but thanks to Joe Loda, are used for their talents, their contacts, and their abilities. And this is an example of where you can do the same.
No, we would appreciate any support that the board could provide in terms of getting legislative support for this particular initiative.
Any additional questions with respect to safety? If not, Chief, we'd like to hear the police report, please.
Good morning. Well, for the month of October, total major felony crime system-wide is down by 9 crimes. It's 13 versus 22, or a decrease of 41% system-wide. That happens to be the lowest October ever. For Metro North, the decrease for October was 9 crimes, 6 versus 15, or down 60%. Of those 6 crimes, 2 were robberies, 1 was burglary, and 3 were grand larcenies, of which half of those 6 resulted in arrests. Year to date in Metro North, there were 110 crimes versus 119, down 9 or 8%. For the hate crime report, year to date, there are 24 crimes versus 23. The specific crime breakdown is as follows. Aggravated harassment, there were 2. Misdemeanor assault, 1. And criminal mischief, 20. This concludes my report.
Yes, Chuck.
Chief, first let me say that I congratulate you and your colleagues, the men and women of the MTA Police Force.
Thank you.
And I've made this point for so long as I've been on this board. Let me first focus on the fact that there were, so far, 6 hate crimes against blacks. How? What?
Those crimes, there was 1 assault, which resulted in an arrest, and the others were anti-black graffiti-type incidents.
And I assume the anti-Semitic ones are predominantly graffiti as well, and there are 13.
Yes, sir.
As I have mentioned before, and as I will repeat every time until somebody gets the message, in 1938, there appeared on my grandmother's store in Germany the word Jude and a swastika. Months later, she and all of my family except my mother and myself and my father were deported out of the country forcibly at bayonet point, and I received the present of these glasses from the Gestapo. Graffiti is the first step toward death, hate, war, and worse, and it has to be stopped out. Anything that anyone can do in any manner, way, shape, and form to stop it must be done. I know that you and your folk have been doing all they can, but it seems to me that it is time for the riding public to turn on these vermin and to give them the just deserts they deserve. I would have no problem if they administered corporal punishment to them. But the fact is, this has got to stop. This nation is being torn asunder by the bigots, the hate mongers, at all levels of the government and of the populace, and it's got to stop.
Commissioner, that is clearly understood, and it's certainly agreed with. See something, say something is to be utilized for any type of crime, particularly that type of hate crime, where our response quickly can result in an arrest, and that's the goal.
Also be followed by the most rigorous prosecution and justly deserved heavy sentences, if appropriate, forever.
Understood, sir.
Any other questions about the crime report? We have some information items.
We do. The first information item is the Diversity and EEO report for the second quarter of 2018. Although this was included in the Diversity Committee book from last week's Diversity Committee meeting, we didn't really discuss it there, so I just want to present some highlights to this committee. I want to first talk a little bit about the Metro North workforce composition as well as our new hires. All these statistics are as of June 30th of 2018. So as of June 30th of 2018, the Metro North workforce excuse me, consisted of 6,749 employees, 13% of whom are female, 38% of whom are minorities, and 8% of whom are veterans. The female number especially sort of strikes me as being particularly low. The good news, if there is a glass half full way of looking at this, is that with respect to our new hires, both for women and for minorities, they're being hired at a higher rate than the current composition in the workforce. So of our 250 new hires as of June 30th, 2018, 15% of them were women, and 48% of them were minorities. So we are hiring at a better clip in terms of representation than is represented by the current workforce. So what are we doing with respect to trying to promote diversity at Metro North, as well as train our employees with respect to their various legal rights? I want to talk about that a little bit. So as far as our diversity initiatives, in an effort to retain females and promote female professional development, we've hosted actually several Women's History Month lunch and learns over the course of the past couple years focused on women in transportation. We've had several corporate conversations about mentoring, work-life balance, and promotional opportunities for women in transportation. We have developed and launched a new interactive training on EEO, harassment, gender expansiveness, and respect in the workplace. We started training with our maintenance of way employees, and as of the Diversity Committee meeting last week, we had trained over 1,900 employees. We have begun to institute various programs to celebrate the diversity of our workforce, including a Jewish American Heritage celebration in May, an Asian Pacific American Heritage potluck also in May, National Caribbean American Heritage celebration in June, LGBTQ Pride Month acknowledgement article in MTA Today in June. We published a guide for promoting Employee Appreciation Month and also held a diversity and inclusion activity, a Yankees-Mets game tickets for participating employees. We are also, through Way Ahead, trying to foster cross-functional teamwork and increase interaction between various levels of management, and also promote networking and mentoring opportunities. So some specific strategies are as follows. Number one, partnering with schools to develop apprenticeship programs that are geared towards attracting minority applicants. Attending recruitment and best workplace practice seminars to increase female hiring and maintain female retention in the workplace. I'm also happy to report that we have a Women Engineers networking group that some of the women engineers at Metro North have formed among themselves. These women talk about networking opportunities as well as work-life balance type opportunities, and plan to work together to try to come up with strategies for attracting more women engineers to the workforce. We're hoping that this group can be replicated with other crafts across the railroad so that we can have more networking groups and more networking opportunities for women at Metro North. One of my takeaways from a lot of these different activities is there is a real desire for more networking across Metro North for women in the workplace. There have been lots of good conversations with respect to what more we can do to build up female representation in the workforce, and I'm hopeful that over the course of the next several months and years, we'll be able to build up our female workforce to be able to be somewhat more representative than the 13% number, which I view as completely unacceptable. I'm happy to answer any questions with respect to ongoing initiatives and any other issues respecting workforce diversity.
Veronica.
As I was reading the diversity reports across all the agencies, I noticed some very positive milestones and some areas of concern. So first, Kathy, I want to thank you for going into additional detail about the initiatives regarding increasing the female workforce. A lot of those details were not in the report, so I sincerely appreciate you providing them, because that was to be one of my questions. Sure. So thank you for preempting that. I also noticed that, as you've pointed out, amongst the new hires, women are increasing in percentage, and also people of color. Some of the concerns that I have, and welcome Myra to the team. One of the concerns that I have, looking again across all the agencies, is regarding internal EEO complaints. Mm-hmm. And what I'm noticing is the percentage is alarmingly high for those employees internally who are making complaints based on race and color. Mm-hmm. It's hovering between 35 to 37% across all the agencies, with the exception of transit being at 25%, which is 10 to 12 percentage points lower, but still relatively high. And then when you look at those complaints and how they're handled, it strikes me that across the agencies, again, for Title VI complaints, 100% of those complaints are ruled in favor of the agency. Now, admittedly, I don't know any of the details of these. I am not on the diversity committee, and frankly, my exposure to this is when I am reading these quarterly reports. Right. So I'm not familiar with the processes, the internal processes, and again, the complaints. But it is a concern that our internal employees and the percentages reported for EEO is so high. And again, I don't understand the process. I'm sure there's many factors that go in on both sides. But in light of not just our political climate, but very specific actions that have come forth at this agency in particular over the months, I feel as though we need a very different tactic and strategy agency-wide to really start tackling and bringing these percentages down. Okay.
Can I respond to that before your question? So a couple things, Veronica. I mean, I think one of the things that, I'm trying to use the metaphor again, looking at this as a glass half full thing, because I want people to come forward, right? I mean, if there's a culture here where people feel like it's futile, or that nobody will hear them, or that the investigations are not taking place in either a timely or thorough way, then people will not bring these things forward. So part of bringing Myra on board is to continue to create a culture where people feel like their complaints will be heard and investigated thoroughly. I don't want there to be a culture where people feel like those complaints are falling on deaf ears and that we're not taking action. So that's, my commitment to this committee is to continue to take steps to create a climate where people feel confident that any allegations that they bring forward will be fully investigated and redressed if they're found to be substantiated. So that's thing number one. The high numbers to me show a healthy reporting culture, which I think is ultimately a good thing. In terms of Metro North specifically, I don't know to what extent this whole committee is aware of this, so I'm happy to have this opportunity. We have retained a consultant, a diversity and inclusion consultant, who is in the process of assisting us in terms of developing tactics for creating a better and more diverse workplace culture. We have launched an employee survey with respect to diversity and inclusion issues, and we are also creating cross-departmental focus groups that will consist of employees from, various years of service, different, different ethnic groups, really a cross section of the workforce to sort of get a little bit more information with respect to diversity and inclusion issues at Metro North and where there might be room for improvement. Those focus group efforts will culminate in a strategy lab session where we get actual recommendations with respect to what we might do better in terms of creating a more diverse and inclusive workforce. So we are engaged in this effort now. We are, right in the middle of it right now, but we are hopeful that it will yield benefits with respect to the promotion of a more diverse and inclusive workforce.
Let me tell you something on the basis of experience. Not all EEO type complaints are validly based. Some are responses to efforts on the part of management to have people do a better job and are a defensive mechanism in that regard. But there are significant numbers of valid complaints, many of which do not even rise to the point of a formal complaint. Let me suggest to you and to the MTA as a whole the following, which has been successful in some areas. It is the appointment of an ombudsman whose function it will be to take a look at complaints if they rise to the level of something that needs to be addressed in an adversarial context or an investigative context or the like, send it to that source. If it rises only to the level of being, and I wrongly use the word only, but if it rises to a lesser level that is one of we are not being treated fairly, women are being discriminated against, African Americans are being discriminated against, but no specifics, then something has to be done by that ombudsman to focus on that area and let management know there's a problem. A good, solid ombudsman in each of these areas will make the work day better, not only for the people who work, but for government and management and the public at large. In addition, it will start to give people the impression that we really care, and that's the most important thing. I know it's worked. It needs people who are really good to do it, though.
Yeah, culture is a sort of slippery word. I mean, that's very precise in my understanding of what culture really means. I'm a gardener, and the culture is what you put the crop into, and the crop cannot grow if you do not have the proper fertility and drainage and those sort of, I'm sure you guys are familiar somewhat with gardening. So that's where the word culture derives from, and in my simple understanding of what these things are. And while I respect that you're attempting to change the culture, which would involve putting a little more nitrogen, a little more humus, maybe adjusting the drainage and moisture of the crops going forward, please don't tell the employees I refer to them as crops. But nonetheless, this is the metaphor. You started with the culture metaphor, so I have to follow through. I know you're trying to adjust it going forward, but you have a culture here as the employees report to me, and I have little to go on other than what the employees tell me, and your statistics you cite here, which I have a couple of to-dos or requests for you on the statistics too as I go further into my discourse. But what you have here, according to the employee, is a culture of a reporting and retribution cycle. And given the very small statistical possibilities of a successful report citing for the claimant, she's shown in the statistics here, when you couple that with the verbal threats of what will happen to you when you report, you can understand why the culture you're starting with is a culture that discourages reporting. It's like, how many times are you going to make this mistake if you're an employee? Are you going to make a report? Oh, you're going to make a report? Oh, fine, you're going to have a great future in this department. And that is the culture you go into. Now, you got to adjust the culture going forward. I recognize it's not your responsibility what happened here historically, but the culture here has been tolerant of many things that historically that you would not be tolerant of today. And listening to Brother Mordler's discussion of Kristallnacht and the horrors of Nazi Germany and how symbolism preceded these horrors, your work culture here has been tolerant of the Confederate battle flag, which is, while nowhere near a swastika, which is really a cry for help, a cry for action, the Confederate battle flag is somewhat revered and by a subculture in Metro North and Long Island Railroad and throughout our society. And it's becoming a sort of a politically correct swastika. It's how you symbolically transmit this culture to subordinate employees. And I would hope you treat that symbol and other symbols, while, you know, junior to the swastika, with a similar sort of cultural opprobrium. Is that the right word, Chuck? And that would be how you proceed going forward. Now, like I said, I have a couple questions here to do really statistics. Do you have, I mean, I read maybe I'm misinterpreting these statistics, just not looking at them in depth, but do you have a breakdown of vertical distribution of race and ethnicity by department? And if so, can we have it? Can we have a look at it? Because the employees report to me that there are pockets of, while not what you would call discrimination. I mean, I can't prove discrimination by, you know, what do they say? Coincidence is not causality. Mm-hmm. You can demonstrate a tendencies and determine, well, why are there pockets of apartheid here where people seem to be separating? Why are they separating here? Are they separating voluntarily? Are they separating vertically because people just can't get promotions? That's what that's what the employees report to me.
We can get you that information.
Yeah, thank you.
Madam Chairman, if I may, point of order. I would like to point out that there may have been a misstatement erroneously by Commissioner Brown. A swastika is not a cry for help. A swastika is an utterance of a deranged mind.
I concur. Sorry, Chuck.
Do you have something that you'd like to add?
As I was listening to Commissioner Brown's statements, it does make me wonder if we have a bigger problem than 35%, because so 35% of the complaints are being reported on race and color. And those are of the individuals that are brave enough to come forward and feel comfortable in this culture that you're explaining. But is there a larger percentage of individuals that would be comprised in that pie slice if everyone that felt some sort of systemic or institutional discrimination came forth?
So I don't know the answer to that question, Veronica, obviously, because you don't know who's not coming forward. So I guess I have a couple things to say. I think thing number one is you can't create trust overnight, right? You know, you'd like to be able to do that. You'd like to be able to say everything is better, and then all of a sudden people believe that they can come forward. It takes a while to build up that trust. It takes a while for people to feel like a new day has dawned, that their allegations will be taken seriously, that the investigations will be thorough. And I'm not so unrealistic that I think that I can just sort of, you know, wave a magic wand and that will be done tomorrow. But we're building a new team, right? I mean, Mayella, who's sitting over here, spent the entire summer and fall driving to different facilities in the middle of the night to give people training. You know, we've trained 2,000 people in the space of 4 months. That was done at all shifts, all locations. Initially, some of the training was met with somewhat of a skeptical response, but as we sort of got out there more questions, more engagement, more interaction. So you start there, right? We have new leadership in the department. You have Myra here, who's got a long history of working very well with unions. That is, you know, her bread and butter has been working in the represented labor environment. I think that having that background, as well as the legal background, as well as the EO background, sends the right message for how seriously we are going to take allegations of discrimination. So I don't, as I said, I don't pretend to be able to change this. You know, I'll continue to use the culture metaphor because I think it's a helpful one. I'm not going to change this culture overnight, but you know, we need to continue to create create an environment where people feel like their allegations will be taken seriously. To Chuck's point, some of them may not be sort of straight up EEO allegations. And actually, Mayella is going back to her old position in employee relations, because some of those allegations really are sort of managerial strife and friction and that sort of thing that are real, but not necessarily EEO violations. And we need to sort of sort through those and give people a setting in which those types of allegations can be freely discussed so that we can build a better workplace in that respect as well. So I think a lot of it goes through to just the overall desire to promote better respect in the workplace. So having a climate in which EEO investigations will be thorough, will be complete, and that people understand and believe that, and to the extent that those issues are not EEO issues but relate to respect in the workplace, that those complaints and concerns will also be fully adjudicated and handled.
I don't see any other issues. I want to thank the board members for their honesty, and to Kathy as well. I think this is a very important discussion to be had not only here, but in all of the operating agencies. As you know, I was asked to step back into the role as chair of the Diversity Committee. It is my intense belief that issues of workforce diversity and workforce respect belong in the operating agencies. They can't be delegated to a committee called Diversity or to the Office of Civil Rights. It starts here, and tolerance for things unacceptable to the board starts here. So, as Mitch knows, I'm going to be pushing to have this kind of discussion at all the operating agencies, because that's where it belongs. We have neglected to do so because of time constraints. Well, they're not as important as getting this right. So thank you for your discussion, and moving right along. We have two other issues for information.
We do. So on a much lighter note, holiday schedules and shopper specials. We've developed special timetables for Thanksgiving weekend, Christmas, and New Year's holidays to address the travel demands of our customers over the holiday periods. We also have a number of shopper special trains that will be operating for 6 weekends between November 17th and December 23rd. Our next information item is the PTC status report, which I've already touched upon. Doesn't sound like we have any PTC questions. And the final information item is something that will be presented to Finance for Action. It's the staff summary seeking approval of the exercise of an option to purchase the fee interest in Grand Central Terminal and Metro North's Harlem and Hudson lines. Jano Lieber is here in case there's any questions about this particular item, as again, this is here for information only. You'll be going for action to Finance later today.
Yes, Chuck. Do you have a question?
On the proposed purchase, which I'd like to know, does the proposed purchase include at all, I assume this is the precinct right or whatever it is, isn't it? Over the terminal, right? Sorry? These are the air rights over the terminal?
No, it has nothing to do with the air rights. This is strictly the physical terminal and the associated ownership of the Harlem and Hudson lines and the development rights pertinent there too. It is nothing to do with the air rights, which the MTA has not owned, which were alienated pursuant to the Penn Central bankruptcy long ago, and we're just exercising the option on the physical terminal itself. That's all we have.
Only exercising the rights for the physical terminal, not the portion of the air rights which studies showed were partially owned by the City of New York, partially owned by Metro North, and partially owned by the former precinct interests. I'll be happy to talk to you offline.
Sure, absolutely.
Litigated the issue some years ago.
Any other questions about Grand Central Terminal? This is a vote that will be taken in Finance, and I suspect we'll discuss the finances in greater detail there. I think we're on to procurements. Al?
Good morning. There are two procurements in this month's package totaling $2,520,940. There is one competitive procurement for $2,004,290 and one ratification for $516,650. There are no non-competitive procurements. The one competitive contract modification in a not-to-exceed amount of $2,004,290 is to Tully Richards joint venture for fire standpipe system upgrades. This contract modification is required to compensate Tully Richards for changes that MNR mandated due to the lack of availability of power sources. The previously identified power sources to operate the heat trace system, which encases the complete standpipe system, was not available for use and was subsequently dedicated to a safety circuit and could not be compromised with additional electrical loads. So this was a owner-directed change. The one ratification is a non-competitive procurement deemed immediate operating need in a not-to-exceed amount of $516,000 to ORX for the purchase of 225 axles for Metro North's coach and M3 fleets. This purchase requires the immediate delivery of axles to MNR property commencing in October. ORX is a previously qualified supplier of axles for coach and M3 cars and can supply the 225 axles in time to meet MNR's immediate needs. ORX pricing is deemed fair and reasonable given the immediate need. May I please have a vote on these procurements?
Second. Question. Chuck.
I'd like to focus your attention on the Tully Richards one. The report states that during the design of the standpipe, determinations, and I'm going to ask you who made these determinations, were made as to where the heat trace system could be electrically supported. And those determinations were documented in the contract drawings and provided as part of the bid documents. Afterwards, someone took a look and found that those sources couldn't be used, and what you're now doing is spending $2 million to fix a mistake. I want to know, where was the mistake made and why wasn't a field examination conducted before you awarded the contract? It's only a $2 million mistake.
No, sir, I was trying to be very clear in the staff summary to indicate that this was 100% Metro North's decision about the fact that we had given very specific direction to the designers about where the power source was to come from. Obviously, Grand Central Terminal is very complicated in terms of power sources and availability. What happened is the power that was available, it was anticipated for this use, was then subsequently used by force account work for signal power, right? And at that point in time, there was an error made, but the drawings reflected what was the designer was told and given to, right? So that the decision was made.
Who made the error? Not an individual, but where? And B, why isn't it a protocol that requires physical field inspection before you do these kind of things? $2 million is money.
Yes, sir, we're aware of that, and an inspection was done at the time the design drawings for bid were done. What I'm saying was the action that was taken where that power was dedicated to something else came out subsequent after the drawings, and that's where the error was made. Again, this is a error that was I won't even classify it as an error. It was a lack of communication between the power department and the subsequent designer that set the documents out.
And what has been done, if anything, to make sure that never happens again?
Well, we now coordinate with all of the user departments, particularly in GCT, which again is very complex in terms of the availability of power and these types of things because so many projects are going on. That's all coordinated at the time that the project is actually put out. Each department has to sign off and acknowledge what the job is, what the drawings indicate before it goes out to be bid.
Mr. Muir, I'm not faulting you. You're just reporting. But I have to tell you, this screw-up is wrong. It shouldn't have happened. It cost the taxpayers $2 million, and somebody ought to take a good hard look to A, make sure that this absolutely never happens. Coordination's a good thing, you know. And two, to make sure that the people who did this understand, at the very least, that they can't do that kind of stuff. Again, at a time when people are asked to pay fare increases, to spend $2 million inappropriately because it's a waste of taxpayer money, but has to be done. That's wrong.
Kathy will describe the mitigation that's in place.
Chuck, we will make sure, we will take a look at our existing processes to make sure that there's, appropriate communication between and amongst the departments so that something like this doesn't happen again.
Kathy, in the course of doing the procurement analysis with a very, very superbly talented guy by the name of Steve Placochi, one of the things that has come up at every turn in the road is the absence of coordination. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing and doesn't give a damn on many occasions. That's got to be a requirement. I'm not saying you're unique. I'm not saying at the senior levels of MTA that is something that they had on their radar or should have had on their radar. But I do believe that at the operating levels, there has to be optimum coordination. This is a $2 million waste of taxpayer funds that should not have happened. If there's an opportunity, if the designers were not internal but were external, we ought to sue whoever did it. If it was internal, we ought to find out the extent to which our insurance, if any, might come into play. But $2 million is still money.
I still need a vote on these. Those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? One abstention to be recorded. There are some monthly reports.
Yes, the monthly reports on operations, finances, ridership, and the capital program are included in the committee book, and we are here to answer any questions that you might have about any of these reports.
Questions? Chuck?
Sorry to be doing this. Again, let me preface this by saying this is not in any way intended as criticism, but trying to find out an answer. If you will look at page 87, you will see that 2,300 trains were more than 15 minutes late, as compared with 261 in 2017, and the number of trains that were terminated were 230 as compared to 19, etc. If you then look at the next page, the categories of delays, and they may not be parallel, all right, appear to indicate that a primary cause is, quote, engineering unscheduled, unquote. The primary, of course, is weather, and I understand that. But the secondary cause is engineering unscheduled. And my question is the following. That's a pretty significant increase in delay, and a pretty significant increase also in the area of engineering unscheduled. What is that, and what are we doing about it?
So engineering unscheduled would be anything that my department has to take care of which wasn't on our track use on our radar. Broken rail, signal failure. We've had recently some problems with our signal power on the New Haven line, which we believe we found the solution to. But it's any type of phenomenon that happens which we have to respond to immediately and could be in any one of my disciplines.
May I, Madam Chair? Am I correct, though, that some of this is inherent in the nature of the business? There's always going to be a broken rail. There's always going to be a this and that. Is this an unusually large increase?
It's hard for me to say that. You're absolutely right. There's always going to be some background noise. You obviously want it lower. You want to proactively find problems and do them so they don't affect service, and you can do them on straight time and save overtime. But we have had a number of issues, some of which were weather-related with pole damage, but it is on our radar to try and tamp that down.
Would it be a burden upon you, and if so, I would withdraw it, but would it be a burden upon you to prepare at some point just a sheet that shows us the kind of incidents, take a given month or a given period of time, that fall within this realm, so that we could specifically focus on that?
Certainly.
Thank you.
The one thing I would also say, Chuck, Chairperson Metzger and I have been discussing a presentation for this committee in the month of January with respect to our 2019 infrastructure programs and the impact that that program has upon service delivery. So we're in the process of putting together that presentation, and we'll deliver it in the January committee cycle.
Veronica?
Two what I hope are quick questions on finance. The first is, on page 102, it notes that there is reduced advertising revenue from a smaller Metro North allocation. Is that, and I think my recollection is bringing me to this, is this a result of our new contract with Outfront? And then the second question is regarding our higher than anticipated subsidy to NJT.
Steve Weiss is going to answer these questions.
The advertising allocation is part of a broader MTA overall allocation, so which is on a fixed total MTA level. The allocation that's coming to Metro North is based on the actual proportion of Metro North specific allocation. So we're getting at this point, compared to the plan, just a smaller update of the actual allocation through the an upfront contract. Okay, and the New Jersey Transit. The New Jersey Transit is based on the service that they provide to us. So I will have to get back to you on the specific drivers of the September and the year-to-date New Jersey Transit costs that we have there.
Yeah, we can make that information available to the whole committee.
Permit me one more question. You notice on page 94 that the number of standees has also significantly increased both on Harlem and New Haven. Is there a reason?
Mike, you want to speak to that?
Sure. On the New Haven line, the standees are a function of the available vehicles, and with the PTC installation, and this also relates to the Harlem line, we're dealing with less than optimal vehicle availability, car availability. And so there's quite a number of trains that are shorter than are programmed, and so we're ending up with more standees than we would expect, and that's probably going to continue for some time. Well, during the PTC.
That's going to be part of the discussion that we have in January. The continued rollout of PTC is going to cause us some issues, and we need to understand those going into it.
I'm sorry, which problem, Chuck? The equipment availability issues? Well, one of the issues that we're going to be dealing with specifically on the New Haven line is the fact that we're retiring the M2 fleet, which is an older fleet. We made the decision not to equip that with PTC because it's an older, aging fleet anyway. And we have, as this committee knows, ordered 66 new M8 cars, which are not scheduled to arrive until the latter part of 2019. So there will be a gap in the New Haven line between the retirement of the M2s, which is going to happen imminently, and the arrival of the M8s later on in 2019. So that's an issue that will, the issue of standees specifically on the New Haven will continue through 2019 until the M8 cars can begin to arrive.
For your benefit,
Sure.
really. We have made a value judgment not to equip all of the older cars on the New Haven with PTC. Is that something that has been called to the attention of the appropriate federal authorities so we don't get into trouble on that count?
With respect to compliance, you mean?
Yeah, that we have decided not to comply.
Oh, no. I mean, we're not going to run anything in service that's not PTC compliant.
Yeah,
no. From a compliance
These
perspective,
are
this is not an
cars
issue.
that are not.
Yes,
taking
exactly.
them out of service.
We're retiring them.
Good.
So there will not be a PTC compliance issue.
That's great. Thank you.
Questions? Nothing? I'd like to remind you that the next Metro North meeting will be joint with Long Island Railroad, and it's December 10th. Thanks to the staff. I know that the constraints on schedule for November and December cause a lot of additional work, and we appreciate it. Motion to adjourn? Second? We're adjourned.